Hello. Hi. It is officially publication day for the Bad Bitch Business Bible. And I am so glad to be here with Cindy Gallop, who has been an inspiration to me since the moment I became an entrepreneur. And I remember when I was still walking in as an insecure good girl, which in my early days and always feeling like I wasn't good enough. And I remember seeing Cindy speaking at an event and just in awe of her give no fucks confidence, and was like, I want to have that kind of aura, that kind of energy one day. And it took many years and a lot of self-work and a lot of digging through all the good girl voices and the pressure, the achievement, the external validation that I had been so conditioned with as a good girl, especially as a immigrant good girl from a Chinese background where there is a lot of pressure to succeed and really conform to certain types of societal norms. But I finally broke free and released the Bad Bitch Business Bible today. And Cindy, I'm so glad to be here with you to have this conversation on going from good girl to bad bitch.
Well, Lisa, I could not be more delighted to be here, and congratulations on your journey, which obviously I've watched and am just filled with enormous admiration and pride.
Thank you. Well, I want to first comment on your shirt, which says, fuck you, pay me.
Darling, I wore it specially for you.
So yeah, in celebration of the Bad Bitch Business Bible, which is really fundamentally about women taking charge of their body, their boundaries, and their bank account, let's just start off with sharing your bit on what does it really mean to take charge of your bank account?
I think first and foremost, Lisa, it is what I've been exhorting women to do for years, because for years I've said to women, I want you to unashamedly set out to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money. And I explain that I deliberately articulate like that because that is how much money I want us all to make. And it's important for women to internalize that, because we are not brought up to think like that. We are brought up to believe that nice girls don't talk about money. We leave that to the men. We should be focusing on other things. And I want women to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money, because money is power. And the important thing is that not only can money transform your life when you make it, but when you make that kind of money, you can then use that money to fund other women, to support other women, donate to other women, help other women. We need to build our own financial ecosystem because the white male one isn't working for us. And so first and foremost, take control of your bank account by saying to yourself, I am now going to unashamedly, unembarrassedly make a goddamn fucking shit ton of money.
I feel like we might break LinkedIn because I don't think it's heard this many curse words, especially from women in such a short amount of time. But I love that. And I think it is so important to really embody your worth. And one of the things that I do write about in my book, I call it the Bad Bitch Benchmark. And it's where you take whatever you think your hourly rate is and double it. Because it's very likely, given that 60% of women never negotiate their first offer, that by the time you actually get to a certain place in your career, you are probably making at least just half of what the man next to you is making, even though you might be doing double the amount of work. And so whatever you think you are worth, the best bet is actually just to double it, because that is probably at least what you are actually worth in dollars and cents.
Well, as you know, Lisa, my approach to this, again, something I've said for women to years, is the amount you ask for is always the highest amount you can say out loud without actually bursting out laughing. And I guarantee this advice works, because literally, I'm not kidding, every week I hear from a woman who says, Cindy, I did that and it worked. I am now being paid like 3 times my previous salary because I did that. I got this massive. So my version of, your absolutely spot on advice is it's the highest amount you can say out loud without actually bursting out laughing.
So, how did you get to this place? Let's go back a little bit to starting with good girl Cindy, or how you grew up, because how did you eventually actually cultivate this side of you, this bad bitch side of you that we see today?
Well, honestly, Lisa, I always say when asked a question like that this is the product of 63 years of life. It's simply experience over time because, equally as like you, I'm half Chinese. I grew up in Asia, so I was absolutely subject to all of those particular, Asian knife skill cultural pressures. And really, it's been an organic process of coming into my own voice, and living life and working work according to my own values. I think the wonderful thing about today, because I didn't have this growing up, is that now we have social media. And so we have so many more ways for women to be exposed to role models that tell them there is a different way of being. There's a different way of working. There's a different way of talking. And so these days, I really want to shortcut that process for other women because it was organic for me over time, but it doesn't have to be for everybody else.
I think it's crazy how empowering, if you find the right pockets of social media. I have learned so much from TikTok and from following some of the women who are, I feel like, stepped out of the matrix of corporate white male status quo world. And so that's really where it comes to this conversation around like surrounding yourself with women, with allies, but really just with other women who have stepped out of the status quo and like found the bravery and the courage within to say, actually, fuck this. This is not how I like to do things. So you started out in advertising and you were quite successful. You led the US division. Tell us a little bit about your experience in corporate and then how and when you took the leap.
Sure. So, what I always say, Lisa, when anybody references my successful career in advertising, is that I was only successful in advertising because I was very, very lucky. And what I mean by that is I was very lucky in two ways. First of all, in my advertising career, I was never sexually harassed in a way that ended my career. And by the way, I absolutely was sexually harassed, but never in the way that so many women in my industry and every other industry have experienced, which is when you are retaliated against and you are forced out of the company, forced out of the industry. And the fact that that did not happen to me is pure luck. Okay, so that's reason number one, that my success is entirely attributable to luck. And the second reason I got very, very lucky is because I can count the number of female bosses that I had in my career in advertising on the fingers of one hand, two. I virtually always worked for men, but I was lucky enough to work for men in every agency I worked at. I worked for men who saw my potential before I did. I worked for men who actively wanted me to succeed, who championed me and gave me every opportunity to do so. And I say I was lucky because that is not the experience of most women in my industry and most women in any industry. So my successful career in advertising was down to pure luck. I was lucky for a long time. And so what led me to finally leave the corporate world was back in 2005, I turned 45 and I had my very own personal midlife crisis, in the sense that I'd always thought of 45 as kind of a midlife point. Obviously, by the way, in the happy assumption one lives to be 90, fingers crossed. But in the couple of years running up to it, I'd always thought, on your 45th birthday is the moment when you should pause, take stock, reflect and review, where have I been, where am I going? So I duly did that on February 1, 2005. And that was the point at which I went, oh my God, I've just worked 16 years for the same advertising agency. Wonderful agency, love them to death. You know, cannot say enough nice things about BBH. But I went, I think it might be time to do something different. And then the problem was I hadn't the faintest idea what. So vast amounts of thought and angsting ensued. And eventually I went, if I want to review every possible option open to me for what is effectively the second half of my life, maybe the best thing to do is to put myself on the market very publicly and go, okay, guys, here I am, what do you got? And see what comes. So I took a massive leap into the unknown. I resigned as chairman of BBH New York in the summer of 2005 without a job to go to. And it was the best bloody thing I ever did in my life. Because I am now evangelical about working for yourself. Too many people think that a job is the safe option. It's not. Because in a job, you are at the complete mercy of management changes, industry downturns, marketplace dynamics. I always say, whose hands would you rather place your future in? Those of a large corporate entity that at the end of the day doesn't give a shit about you, or somebody who will always have your best interests at heart, i.e. you?
Well, I think that's the big thing, is learning how to bet on yourself. And so I left corporate job finance, and it was similar in that I didn't have that safety net, didn't have any plans. All I knew was that I wanted the creative freedom to make a bigger impact, and that there was no way I was going to be able to do that within the confines of the four walls of corporate, where, exactly to your point, you don't have that freedom, right? You don't have the ability to really pursue your own vision. And so I think that this is always a really critical point in a woman's journey, well, really in anyone's journey, but especially for women who are thinking about becoming a business owner, because I think that women are becoming business owners at 5 times the national average. And it really is a mirror, a reflection of the way the corporate world does not serve us. It doesn't serve our bodies. It doesn't serve our minds. It doesn't serve our spirit. It doesn't serve our way that we should actually be living. And so what advice would you give to a woman who is thinking of starting, but has been procrastinating, doubting, just daydreaming about it, but not taking action?
Sure. So I'm regularly asked in interviews about my career, so Cindy, what sexism did you encounter coming up through the ranks of advertising? And my response is always, a fish does not know what water is. Because there was sexism all around me, but it was the norm. I never noticed it. And the reason I'm responding with this, Lisa, is because every woman in every industry is mired in the old world order, white male industry model. We have not even begun to see how every industry can be completely reinvented through the female lens. And so I really encourage the women you're talking about to do 2 things. The first is take a long, hard look at your industry, at what area you think you want to start your own thing in, and identify through your individual lens what you think should be there that isn't. What you would have loved to be able to use yourself in the industry that you can't because nobody ever brought it to the table. What you think you could uniquely bring to the industry that nobody else has, and then start that. Because I guarantee you, there are so many different ways to do business. There are so many different ways to build infrastructure. There are so many different ways to reinvent any industry through the female lens that have not even begun to be leveraged because there are not enough women looking at it like that. So that's advice number 1. Advice number 2 is, when you conduct that exercise, bring an additional lens to it. So my dear friend, Natalie Molina Nino, whom I think you know, she wrote some years back a wonderful book called Leapfrog, which I recommend to every woman. And it's called Leapfrog because she interviewed a ton of female founders, myself included, about all of the challenges we face building our businesses and how we overcame them, to provide a manual that enables other women to leapfrog those same obstacles. And it's a great book. But the reason I'm telling you this is because in that book, there was a wonderful line from Natalie that I quote all the time, where she basically says, how when we talk about starting our own businesses, we are always encouraged, find what you're passionate about and, build a business out of that. Natalie says, forget passion, find things you want to punch. And so my advice to women, secondly, is look at the industry and identify what makes you red hot with rage. What frustrates the fuck out of you? What have you been putting up with for far too long? Find what makes you really angry, solve that. Because I guarantee if you want to punch it, so do 15 million other people, and there is a huge market opportunity in solving something that enrages everybody else as much as you.
That is exactly what I say in chapter 1 about the 2 emotions that you should follow when trying to define and figure out your bad bitch dream, which is the thing that you're going to pursue. And those 2 emotions are anger and joy. Because I think that what I have experienced is that there is something very, very powerful about feminine anger. And there's a reason why they have the phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, because you do not want to scorn a woman who is smart and savvy and knows what she wants. And so the thing though is like once you find that anger, there's, I think, the transmuting into creative purpose. And you can create things in the world. But the other thing that I found is that sometimes anger becomes tiring. That can't be your only fuel forever. And the thing that then needs to be a part of it is also your daily joy, right? Like this needs to be something that you love doing. You wake up, you're excited, even though you're like, screw this, I'm so pissed off, I'm going to solve this problem, but I love doing this. And this is really fun. And so that's another thing that I've been really prioritizing this year is, I've been working and you've been working on female empowerment and just really changing the status quo for so long. But there is a point where I'm like, I want to have a shit ton of fun while I'm doing this too.
I think those 2 emotions can absolutely coexist, as you say, Lisa. I would say that, to your point, I mean, as long as you manage it and channel it in the right kind of way, anger is very important to keep going. Again, I've been telling women for literally decades, I want you to get very, very angry. And I say that because we are never encouraged to be angry, because nice girls don't get angry, don't show anger. But also because it's when we get angry that we make shit happen. And so, I am angry on a daily basis because of what I battle on Make Love Not Porn. But that's a good thing because, the single thing that keeps me going is a dynamic that I characterize as I'm going to fucking well show you. You tell me it can't be done, I'm going to fucking well show you. You put an obstacle on my path, I'm going to fucking well show you. And those obstacles come up every day. And the only way that I can overcome them is by channeling all of that demoralization and depression and humiliation into motivation and inspiration. So I'm good with staying angry as long as you channel it, manage it in the right kind of way.
So how would you respond to yesterday? We had a Bad Bitch Live with my good friend Shannon, and we were talking about, she is someone who is very optimistic, very people gravitate towards her because she's just super optimistic and super kind. And we talked about being unbothered. So non-reaction. How do you think about the concept of being unbothered, especially by the trolls, the haters, the critics?
I think it's all about picking your moment to be unbothered, because, again, something I've said for many years, if nobody speaks up, nothing changes. And so, by all means, absolutely be unbothered in a situation where it would only be, empty negativity if you were to react to, let's say trolls. But be very, very bothered in situations that absolutely require right-minded people to be bothered. It's there are too many unbothered people in this world, especially men. Men are remarkably unbothered by everything that happens to women. Okay, so I don't think being unbothered is the right response generally, but by all means, be unbothered about things that will, impact your peace of mind for no good reason. But otherwise, I want us all to be very, very bothered.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot on the shoulders of women today who are taking it upon themselves to create change. And so I think that's even why it's even more important for us to be having this conversation unapologetically and out loud about what is the right response and how do we support other women when in the past certain responses would be considered crazy or bitchy or insert negative adjective label. I mean, even just with the cover of my book to date, and even with the name, I knew it was going to be provocative, but it's definitely been interesting to see the types of people, primarily conservative, older white men who support women in talk, but perhaps not in the walk, who have an issue with it. And so initially I felt like a bit angered, but then I realized that's the kind of stuff you get somewhat unbothered by.
No, absolutely, because, and this is something that, again, I've been talking about for a very long time. I think, I gave a speech on this something like, golly, 18 years ago, because it was back then that, I think it was back then. So a survey came out, a women in the workplace, that unsurprisingly identified that, women who basically operate like men do are seen as domineering, aggressive bitches. But women who operate like women do are seen as weak, feminine, and ineffectual. And the name of the study was literally damned if we do, doomed if we don't. And the New York Times article back in the day that covered that study said, I quote, "Women can't win." So off the back of that, I've been advising women for years. When in doubt, be the bitch, because that will get you far more of what you want than fading quietly and ineffectually into the wallpaper. So when in doubt, be the bitch.
Be the bad bitch.
Be the bad bitch.
So, okay. I get this question a lot, and I'd love to hear your take on it, which is a lot of women are asking me these days, how do I become more confident? How do I become more extroverted? How do I assert my voice? And as someone who has traditionally been introverted, and I would still say from the technical definition, there is a big side of me that is still introverted, but when I turn it on, I can turn it on, right? And I have been asked that question a lot, like, how do I step out of my shell? So what advice do you have for those women?
Do you know, Lisa, I'm a big fan of radical simplicity. I like to keep things very, very simple. And this is the simple answer to that. What I would say to those women is, if they've never done this exercise, and I find that most people haven't, take a long, hard look inside yourself and identify what you stand for, what you believe in, what your values are, what you're all about. Because when you do that, first of all, that makes life so much easier. Life still throws you all the shit it always will, but you know exactly how to respond to that shit in any given situation in a way that is true to you. And by the way, that is the secret of happiness, living your life, working your work in a way that is true to you. But also, that is what then gives you confidence. When you know that what you are about to speak up about, what you're about to do, is coming out of your values and what you stand for. Confidence doesn't even enter the frame as an abstract concept. You know, you just know the right thing to do. you know that you need to speak up in that situation because that is what your values require you to do. And I encourage women to think about it like that because, I think there's too much talk about confidence as this thing that you have to somehow grab and attach to yourself. And, literally all it is identify your values, your beliefs, and only ever operate according to those, not anybody else's. And you will find the confidence comes naturally.
I think that going back to our initial part of what we were talking about, I think it's about learning also the balance between knowing what to give a fuck about, which is what you really care about, and simultaneously knowing what to not give a fuck about. And realizing that your opinion of yourself is the most important one. And so long as you are staying true to that, that is, and you can finally really to your core believe that, I think that's when it starts to come. Because I think what most good girls do is that they are outsourcing their worth to external validation, external opinion, external approval, external permission. And you have to reclaim that power.
Absolutely, Lisa. That is why, I recommend to everybody, stay away from people and places and things that make you feel bad about yourself.
Yes, that is the definition of toxic situations, when you stay there around people who make you feel bad. Speaking of that, have you ever been in those situations for prolonged periods of time?
Not anymore. I mean, I feel very fortunate because, I work for myself and I absolutely have the power to stay away from people and places and things that make me feel bad about myself. So no, I haven't been anywhere like that in a very, very, very long time, I'm happy to say.
When was the last time that you were in, when you were younger?
So I would say probably in the corporate world, probably and again, I'm being non-specific here because I genuinely, this is so long ago, I left the corporate world 18 years ago. So, but probably in some situation that was dominated by white men where, because I was doing a corporate job, I couldn't speak up and protest and leave in the way that I would have liked to. Because obviously in the corporate world, you find yourself in situations where it's not easy to refuse to go to that conference or attend that dinner or whatever. But honestly, since then, I really can't think of anything.
I love that. So I want to also touch on, I'm going to take out the book and choose one of the commandments to talk through, because we've actually talked through a lot. And this was why also, by the way, actually, I would love for you to read your review on the back of the book.
Yes, everybody. I'm on the back cover of the Bad Bitch Bible. And what I say is, want to dump self-doubt in the trash, set firm boundaries, design the life you want to lead, and make an absolute darn fucking shit ton of money? This is your Bible.
Woo! I love that. And of course, you had to be on the back of the book. I was so grateful and so appreciative of that. Definitely a dream come true. So one of the things that I do want to touch upon, I want to go towards the bank account section. And this is about a bad bitch invests her assets. So a big part of the journey that I've been on from entrepreneur now to investor is really around realizing that there's so much conversation around women only get 2% of funding, women are like, blah. We're so tired of hearing those statistics, right? And I realized that, okay, well, in order to change that, we also need more female check writers. Women need to write checks because women understand the types of businesses that women are building. What has your experience been with fundraising and also with investing?
Sure. So actually, I'll answer the second part of that question first, because depressingly for me, Lisa, in order to keep my own business, Make Love Not Porn, going, I've had to put everything I have into it. And I mean literally everything, my savings, my retirement fund. I yearn to fund other women, but until I can make my own business make money, I'm not in a position to be able to do so. But the moment I am, you bloody bet I'm out there funding women out the wazoo. On the first part of the question about raising funding, what I would say, because I think, you know, our audience and the readership of the Bad Bitch Business Bible should think about this. There are three reasons that I've personally encountered why I cannot get Make Love Not Porn entirely funded by women. And by the way, I yearn to. I want nothing but female investors. So three reasons. The first is that, and this is a very obvious one, depressingly, obviously, far fewer women have assets than men do to invest. You know, fact of life, everything from the gender pay gap to the fact that white men fund white men who go on to fund other white men, et cetera, mean that women have less money to fund with. Okay, so that's problem number one. Problem number two is that even when women do have money to fund other women with, they do not have the investor mindset. So unlike men, we are not brought up with the idea that an integral part of your life is managing money, earning money, you know, investing money. And then the third obstacle is especially depressing. And I have personally encountered this myself, but friends who are female founders with more conventional businesses have encountered a lot more. And that is that quite often, when you have a woman who A, has the money to invest, B, has the inclination to invest, C, that woman has a spouse or a partner, often of the male variety, and she says to that partner, "Oh, darling, I'm thinking of funding this." And he goes, "No, no, no, you don't want to do that." And she doesn't. I've absolutely encountered that. So everybody listening to this, women who want to fund other women, first of all, absolutely set out to make an absolute goddamn fucking shit ton of money so you can. Secondly, you know, consciously, actively think, I am going to invest in women because they will give me the biggest returns. And thirdly, do not consult your partner, your spouse, your husband, or your male friend about doing so. Just do it.
Yes. And I think the other thing, by the way, for anyone who is listening, make sure you go to badbitchempire.com because our investor club is coming out soon. So I think that all the things you said were really spot on about just the socialization of women and money and why it's been so difficult, given that 90% of money articles targeted at men are about investing in growth, and 90% of the money articles targeted at women are about saving and spending less. And so there's this fear around seeming greedy or even seeming rich and selfish, because it's almost like our culture respects these like risk-taking maverick men who fail and get up again and make boatloads of money. But if the woman does the same thing, first of all, she is highly critiqued if she makes any error, right? And then secondly, it's if she does make a ton of money, she is critiqued for every other little thing, whether her clothing, her makeup choice, her romantic choice, her, you know, everything. And so I think the media is not kind to women, both in terms of portrayal of role models as well as in the types of education that we're getting. But luckily, that's why we have the internet and social media. And I think that it's also really important for women to consciously choose the outlets that you listen to. And I think that that's what I really think is beautiful about this time right now, which is that we can find our communities. We can find the people we resonate. We can find the information that we want. If you want to say, I want to make I gotta say, you're goddamn shit ton fucking ton of money, then you need to listen to women who have that mindset and don't have the shame and the fear around it, and actually then take action and be around women who want to hold you accountable and say, okay, like, let's invest in this together. And so that's what really this whole movement is about, what it really means to be a bad bitch, taking charge of your body, boundaries, and bank account. And I think that just the more we talk about it, the more we release the shame and guilt and fear around it.
And this is also, Lisa, why I am all about LinkedIn. And by the way, if you had told me 10 years ago that one day I would say to you, I'm all about LinkedIn, I would have laughed in your face. Today, I'm all about LinkedIn. And that is because not only is, to the point we're talking about, LinkedIn is my #1 Make Love Not Porn investor lead generator. So you can absolutely find investors on LinkedIn, but it's because, LinkedIn today, I mean, Twitter's a shit show, Instagram's not performing, Facebook is useless. LinkedIn is absolutely where we get to encounter amazing female role models. I mean, I love my LinkedIn followers and connections and network because I will admit, by the way, I'm not a scroller, and this is true of all social platforms. I will go on and post, and when I post, I will look at whatever happens to turn up in my home feed. But just doing that on LinkedIn, I discover so many amazing women posting amazing things. As you say, ignore the media headlines about girl bosses. On LinkedIn, we can absolutely find our tribe. And there are so many amazing women role modeling, how they are changing the world to be the world that we all want to live and work in. So, I absolutely concur. And, as far as I'm concerned, LinkedIn is where we find our people.
Amazing. So how would one of the things that I also talk about in my book is around finding your core values. We talked briefly about this in terms of figuring out what you care about, what you want to give a fuck about. What would you say are 3 core values that you have that dictate how you live your life, the people you surround yourself with, and it's who you are?
Well, interestingly, they are exactly the same values that I talk about with Make Love Not Porn, because we pioneered the concept of sexual values, because no one ever thinks about values in that context. And I absolutely operate in terms of translating the values I believe in living and working into the bedroom as well. But I would say that, and by the way, I have a longer list than 3, but if I have to hone it down to 3, I would say empathy. So absolutely empathizing with other people, understand the situations they're in, which, by the way, is a very important value for really being able to rationalize and deal with challenges, because quite often what you're coming up against has nothing to do with you, it's to do with how bad a day the other person is having. So put yourself in their shoes, ask, what's keeping them awake at night, because that might be something you can then solve and get to a better place. So empathy. Respect is enormously important for me. I designed the entire concept of Make Love Not Porn around respect for our community. And the reason I even have to highlight that point is because for too many white male founders, community is data, statistics, dollar signs. There is no respect built into the way that many people have approached their business. And so just respect for everybody as an integral value is a very important part of how I live my life. And then, I think if I have to narrow it down to 3, kindness, just be kind.
Yeah, I love that. And you can be a bad bitch and also kind. For all those people who are confused,
Yeah.
I've gotten some comments. I got this comment from of course, a man. He's like, when did it become out of fashion to be a good girl? Why do we have to? And I'm like, he's like, why do we have to be bad? Why can't we be good people? I'm like, I'm not gonna have this conversation.
Yeah, no. When somebody asks that, it's exhausting to even contemplate attempting to have that conversation. There is no need to have that conversation. Be unbothered by that conversation.
Unbothered. So, okay. What is the next? Let's just fast forward into. Okay, we've talked a lot of topics, everything from values to negotiations to sexism in the workplace. What does your next steps with Make Love Not Porn look like? What has been your biggest milestones and what are you most excited about?
Well, my biggest milestone has been simply we're still here. I've managed to keep Make Love Not Porn operational for over 10 years on just $3 million of funding from one investor and all my own savings. That's an extraordinary feat. So I'm working to raise $17.4 million because it's about bloody time to scale the core business and build out the 0 to 18 and beyond sex education expansion of Make Love Not Porn, MakeLoveNotPorn.academy. I lay my vision for that out at that URL. So listeners, check out MakeLoveNotPorn.academy. And I'm really excited about when I raise that money, ideally from at least some female investors, and I can scale Make Love Not Porn, build out the 0 to 18 sex education version, and change the world through sex, which is what I'm trying to do.
Amazing. So any last bad bitch tips for women as they embark on the rest of their career and life?
Well, obviously, everybody should read the Bad Bitch Business Bible. But I think what I would say, Lisa, is I would say to our listeners, when you do that, don't make these one of those business books that you read and think that was great and put back on the bookshelf. Live it. Because I do think that Lisa has written a book that is enormously actionable. So as you read it, literally overlay your life onto the pages and ask yourself, what can I do now that will change my life for the better, coming out of all of this fantastic advice that I'm absorbing from this book?
Thank you so much. And I will add to that, that's exactly what I hope that women will get from the book, is that they'll take action. And in the first chapter, I talk about the radical self-responsibility pledge, which is the pledge to yourself to take full responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, because you are the author of your story. You have full control over the reality you want to create. And while we can't control, other people's opinions or reactions or whatnot, we are the creator of any reality that we want. And so it's really about putting yourself out there unapologetically, being the bad bitch that you were born to be, and just really following the things that you care about, surrounding yourself with a badass tribe, and believing in yourself, betting on yourself no matter what.
Hear, hear.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much again for being a part of the Bad Bitch Empire, for always being an inspiration and role model for all of us. And thank you everyone for tuning in to this Bad Bitch Live. So excited to join us for the next one. There's going to be so many over the course of this week. So I hope to see you there. Thank you. Bye.